Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
The envelope was sitting right there on my doormat, like it owned the place. Cream-colored, thick paper, gold trim, and handwriting I'd recognize even if I were blind drunk. Sharp, swooping letters, with a dramatic underline on the Y. Vanessa's handwriting. The last time I saw it, it was on an affidavit where she signed her name just under a paragraph accusing me of professional negligence. I didn't pick it up right away. I stood there barefoot in my doorway, coffee cooling in my hand, stomach already sour. My name was scrawled on the front in that same elegant script. Natalie. No doctor title, no last name, just Natalie, like I was still her little sister and not the woman she threw under a bus in front of the Virginia Medical Licensing Board. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I finally tore it open. A birthday invitation, classic Vanessa. Hand-pressed paper, RSVP card included with a wax seal. Who the hell sends wax-sealed invites in this century? Join us in celebrating Vanessa Shaw's 35th birthday, it said, at the Shaw family estate in Sonoma. My stomach twisted harder. I hadn't been back to that place since before everything exploded. The hearing, the media storm, the silence from my family afterward. The winery estate was more than a vacation house. It was where the Shaws paraded their legacy around like it was Old Testament royalty, and I'd been erased from all of it. But then I saw the line, hosted by Vanessa Shaw and her fiancé, Adam Lennox. I blinked. Adam? That Adam? My chest went cold. He wouldn't be alive if it weren't for me. 4 years ago, during a black site evac in rural Turkey, I had my hands in his chest cavity for almost 30 minutes, keeping pressure while the transport team fumbled the route. He coded twice. I kept him breathing. And then, a full month later, I got hauled into an internal review and blamed for violating protocol, despite following field triage standards to the letter. My name got dragged, my license suspended, pending further review. And when the board met, Vanessa showed up and said I was mentally unstable and under pressure had snapped. Now he was marrying her. Did he know? Did he even remember my name? I sat down on the front step, invitation in one hand, coffee in the other. Then I went back inside, pulled out a pen, and filled in the RSVP card. Dr. Natalie Cole, MD, attending. I sealed it and stuck it in the return envelope. I wasn't going back to grovel. I was going back to face them. All of them. I parked my rental car just past the wrought iron gate with the Shaw family crest still gleaming like it was trying to prove something. Gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped out. I wore black slacks, a tucked-in navy blouse, and a worn leather tote. Sharp enough to be noticed, plain enough to not look like I cared. I hadn't been here in 6 years, and not a damn thing had changed. The rows of grapevines lined up like soldiers. Stone paths were swept clean. Patio lights curled over the terrace just like they used to during harvest parties. It looked perfect. Manufactured perfect. And all I could think about was how it looked the last time I left. Storming out after the tribunal, Rebecca watching from the balcony like I'd embarrassed her, more than I'd embarrassed myself. I walked toward the open side gate. Classical music floated out from the terrace. Laughter, clinking glasses, I stepped through. Oh my God, Natalie? Vanessa's voice popped up like she'd spotted a ghost. What a surprise! She crossed the patio in a blur of champagne silk and fake warmth. Her arms wrapped around me fast, the way people do when they're trying to control the moment. Her perfume smelled expensive and bitter. I wasn't sure you'd actually come, she said, pulling back. You look so grounded. Traffic was light, I said, not smiling. A few heads turned. Some of the guests glanced at me, clearly unsure what to do. One man gave me a polite nod and looked away. Another whispered something to the woman next to him. Nobody rushed to say hi. Everyone, this is my sister, Natalie, Vanessa said, loud enough to catch attention. You might remember she used to be a trauma surgeon, but she's retired now. She runs a cute little online store. Survival kits, right? My jaw clenched. Medical-grade wilderness kits, I said, still used by responders and med teams overseas. Oh, right, she said, waving it off like I sold scented candles. So niche. Before I could say anything else, Rebecca appeared. She looked exactly the same, all bone structure and judgment. Wrapped in a tailored gray sheath dress, her wine glass was already half empty. Natalie, she said, nodding like she was greeting an investor, not her daughter. I see you decided to come after all. Nice to see you too, Mom, I wasn't sure if you'd remember the way, she said. It's been so long. Memory's still intact. She didn't offer a hug. She didn't even smile. Just sipped her wine and moved on without another word. I scanned the patio, needing something to look at that didn't make me want to set fire to the drapes. That's when I saw him, standing near the edge of the terrace, talking to two guests. Tall, still broad-shouldered. His face was more lined, but that scar on his left temple, the one from the debris that split his head open, hadn't faded. Adam Lennox. He turned as Vanessa led me toward him. His eyes landed on me, calm at first, then slightly squinting, like he was trying to place a face from a dream. Adam, Vanessa said sweetly, this is Natalie, my sister. You two haven't officially met, right? I reached out my hand. We've crossed paths. His grip was firm. He looked at me just a second too long. Wait, Natalie Cole? He asked, eyebrows pinching slightly. I smiled, just barely. Dr. Natalie Cole, yeah? It's been a while. Vanessa laughed quickly. She's being modest. She's not practicing anymore, but yes, she was a surgeon once upon a time. Adam didn't laugh. He just kept staring, something clearly turning in his head. He let go of my hand slower than expected. I feel like I know that name, he said, more to himself than to me. You probably do, I said. I used to have a pretty loud career. Vanessa gave a sharp little laugh and cut in. Anyway, Adam, come help me with the wine. I want to show you the reserve we're serving with dinner. He hesitated for half a second before nodding and following her. I didn't move. I just watched the two of them walk back inside, her hand on his back like she owned him. I didn't need the tour. I knew exactly where I was and why I came. I turned toward the garden path and started walking. I followed the stone path back toward the patio, just as the sun dipped behind the hills. The guests were already gathering, glasses in hand, napkins tucked under plates stacked with roasted duck and some kind of wild mushroom puree. No one looked surprised that I was still there, just vaguely uncomfortable, like they'd hoped I'd vanish after my cameo. Vanessa stood at the head of the long outdoor table, holding up her glass like she was posing for a wine label. Her dress caught the candlelight, her smile even more so. I took the empty seat at the far end next to an older couple who barely nodded at me. Thank you all for being here tonight, Vanessa started, raising her voice just enough to silence the chatter. 35 years. What a ride. A few polite laughs. She turned slightly toward Rebecca, who sat near the center, regal as ever, chin tilted, not even pretending to look warm. I wouldn't be who I am today without the legacy of this family. Loyalty, sacrifice, discipline, and above all, standards. We've built something here. Not just a vineyard, not just a brand, but a name people trust, a name that means something. I watched Rebecca nod, slow and approving. And I'm lucky, Vanessa went on, to have people around me who understand what that means, who hold themselves to the same high bar. Her eyes flicked down the table. Some of us take that legacy into medicine. Some of us repackage it into paracord and waterproof matches. A few guests laughed, sharp, nervous chuckles. Someone coughed. I didn't move. I mean, she added, holding her smile, you have to admire the creativity. I guess healing looks different for everyone. More laughs. Rebecca didn't even pretend to be neutral this time. She smirked, like the punchline was overdue. I stared straight ahead. My face felt hot, but I didn't blink. They wanted a reaction. I wasn't giving them one. Then I heard it, a sharp clink. A wine glass slipped from Adam's hand and shattered near his foot. Everyone went quiet. He just stood there, frozen, staring across the table at me like I'd suddenly changed shape. Wait, he said, your name's Natalie Cole. I nodded once. That's right. He shook his head slowly. You were in Turkey 4 years ago. The evac team, the triage unit. You were... He turned to Vanessa. You said she died. You told me the evac failed. Vanessa's face barely moved. You were in recovery for weeks. You were hallucinating half the time. He looked back at me. You were there. You kept me breathing. I met his eyes. You coded twice. Field reports said 3, but it was 2. I cracked your chest in a tent with failing power and no assist. You had a ruptured lung and internal bleeding from the blast. His mouth opened, but no words came out. They pulled me off you when the second team arrived, I said calmly. Said I broke protocol, said I disobeyed triage order. They blame me for delaying the evac. Vanessa cut in, her voice tight. There were complications. No one was blaming anyone. It was chaotic. No, I said. They blamed me, Vanessa, and you testified to it. Said I was unstable, said I'd gone rogue. Guests shifted uncomfortably. One woman actually stood, pretending to check her phone. Adam looked like he'd been slapped. You saved my life. I remember the way you looked at me. Told me not to die like some recruit. Jesus, I thought you were dead. Not dead, I said, picking up my glass. Just professionally executed. He turned to Vanessa. Why would you lie about that? She reached for his arm. You were traumatized, Adam. It wasn't the time to give you every messy detail. He pulled away. You said she endangered the unit, that she cracked under pressure, that her license was revoked. It was suspended, I snapped, because someone submitted a psychological eval with no basis. Someone who knew the right people on the board. Vanessa's face had gone stiff. This isn't the time or place. No, I said, standing. You're right. This is your party, your legacy. You pick the time. I'm just here for the facts. The table stayed dead quiet. The only sound was someone stepping on broken glass. I looked at Adam one last time. He was staring at Vanessa like he'd never seen her before. I stepped back from the table, turned, and walked toward the open gate. I didn't make it 10 steps down the gravel path before I heard footsteps behind me. Natalie, wait. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. I already knew it was him. Adam caught up and stepped beside me, breath sharp, jacket half-buttoned like he'd left in a rush. Just give me 5 minutes, he said, voice low. I nodded and kept walking. We cut across the back hedge line toward the lower garden, past the trimmed rose rows and the old stone bench we used to take family photos on. The air smelled like soil and lemon balm. No voices reached us out here. I stopped near the arbor and turned to face him. All right, I said. Ask. He looked dazed, like his body had moved faster than his brain could catch up. Was any of it true? I crossed my arms. What do you think? I don't know, he admitted. She told me you cracked under pressure, that you ignored chain of command, that people almost died because of you. She left out the part where I filed a complaint 3 weeks earlier, I said, about faulty surgical kits and expired fluid bags we were getting from contracted supply shipments. He blinked. You filed what? An internal report. Quiet, professional, logged through the proper channels. I flagged discrepancies in the supplier chain. Stuff was arriving half-labeled. Some of it mismatched lot numbers. It put patients at risk. His mouth tightened. I followed up. Nobody responded. 2 weeks later, I escalated it through civilian compliance. That's when everything flipped. Suddenly, I was unstable, aggressive, unfit for leadership. You know what came next? The review board. I nodded. Vanessa testified that I was erratic, that I'd grown paranoid. She quoted conversations we never had. Our own mother submitted a character statement saying I'd been emotionally volatile since med school. The whole thing moved so fast, I barely had time to speak. Adam leaned against the arbor post like the weight of it was too much. Jesus Christ. She knew exactly who to talk to, I said. She used every connection this family had, the same ones that got her that cushy hospital directorship less than a year later. He looked up at me, jaw clenched. So she let them take your license? Just to protect her own climb? She didn't let them. She pushed them. They needed someone to blame for the supply scandal. She gave them me. He was quiet for a few seconds. Wind moved through the trees. You could still hear faint laughter from the patio, like nothing had happened at all. I kept thinking about that day, he said. The evac. I remembered your voice. I remembered waking up back at the base hospital and asking where the doctor went, the one who worked on me in the tent. Vanessa told me you'd gone AWOL, that you broke down after the rescue and disappeared. I laughed. Bitter, short. I was in D.C. being ripped apart by a panel of men who'd never held a scalpel. That's where I disappeared to. He rubbed the side of his face, then dropped his hand. She told me what she needed to tell me, and I believed it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. You were right there, he said quietly, and I didn't even recognize you. You weren't supposed to, I said. That was the point. Footsteps clicked behind us. I turned just as Vanessa appeared at the end of the path, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. She didn't smile this time. There you are, she said. Everyone's wondering where the guest of honor wandered off to. Adam didn't move. She looked at me. It's not the time, Natalie. No, I said, stepping back. But it's past time. Vanessa turned to Adam, softening her tone. Let's go back, okay? This isn't something you want clouding your head tonight. There's so much left to celebrate. He glanced at her hand on his arm. Then he looked at me, then back at her. I just need a second, he said. Her jaw tensed, but she forced a nod and backed away. I'll be inside, she said. Don't take too long. When she disappeared around the hedge, Adam looked at me again, this time with something closer to shame than confusion. I didn't offer comfort. I turned and started walking toward the old greenhouse at the edge of the garden. I drove home in silence, hands tight on the wheel the whole damn way. No music, no air. Just the sound of tires eating up pavement and my brain ripping through every angle like a scalpel in a rush job. Adam had questions now, real ones. But questions weren't enough, not for what came next. As soon as I got inside, I went straight to the hall closet, shoved past a stack of folded towels, and yanked out the fireproof box buried behind old Christmas lights. I dropped it on the kitchen table and flipped the latches open. Inside were the scars, tribunal records, hearing transcripts, incident logs, all printed and highlighted, some pages still warped from coffee spills and my own stupid tears. I spread them out across the table like they could finally give me something new, something I hadn't already read 100 damn times. There it all was, the accusations of negligence, the professional concern memos from unnamed board members, the psych eval summary that read like a hit job written in legalese, most of it unsigned, all of it sanitized. And then, tucked in the back, the old email trail, only partial copies, screenshots, snippets of back and forth between procurement and medical services during the mission rotation, enough to show there were supply problems, but no names, no direct link to Vanessa or Rebecca or the board. That's what I needed. Proof of collusion, not suspicion, not theory, digital proof. I grabbed my phone and scrolled until I found the name Jared Baines. We hadn't talked in over a year, but I knew he'd pick up. Nat, he answered on the second ring. Holy shit. I need your help, I said, cutting the nostalgia. It's about the board, the tribunal, the cover-up from 4 years ago. He exhaled hard. All right, talk. You remember that case we worked? The remote log tampering at Richmond Memorial? Yeah, the admin thought his assistant was leaking data to his ex-wife's lawyer. Why? You said you could scrape deleted logs from offline drives if you had a system image or a shared credential, right? Sometimes, yeah, he said. Depends how far the cleanup went. I need hospital server logs from the rotation I served in, and internal emails between Shaw, Rebecca Cole, and the ethics board chair. Jesus, he muttered. You trying to burn the whole place down? I'm trying to tell the truth, I said. They killed my name. They buried what happened overseas and rewrote it to serve themselves. Silence. Then, do you have any data from that time frame? Even partials? I've got a flash drive, I said, already getting up and heading to my office. Copies of emails, supply chain requests, flagged reports. Enough to match metadata if you get anything back. All right, he said. I'll look. No promises. This stuff's old. I don't need promises, I need footprints. Ghosts in the system. Whatever you can pull. He gave me a meeting spot, a 24-hour diner near the airport where we used to drink bad coffee and swap war stories from our burnout jobs. I didn't hesitate. I printed a label, shoved the flash drive in a padded envelope, and locked it in my glove box. By the time I got to the diner, Jared was already there, hoodie up, laptop open, looking like every sketchy IT guy in every backroom thriller. I sat down across from him and slid the envelope over. If there's anything in those hospital archives, I said, I need it recovered. Deleted files, email logs, IP trails, anything. He nodded slowly. If this goes sideways, you realize they'll come after you again. I'm counting on it, I said. He tucked the drive into his bag and closed his laptop. I'll let you know what I find. I stood up and grabbed my keys. Just find the truth, Jared, I said. I'll take care of the rest. 2 nights later, I met Jared in the back lot of an old strip mall just outside Richmond, the kind of place where every store had tinted windows and half the neon signs flickered. He was parked under a busted-out street lamp, hoodie up again, shoulders stiff like he hadn't slept. He waved me over without saying anything. I climbed into the passenger seat and shut the door behind me. "You look like hell," I said. He pulled the flash drive from his coat pocket and handed it over. "So do you, but at least you've got a reason." I slid the drive into my jacket and waited. "I wasn't going to call you until I was sure," he said. But I found it. A chain of deleted emails, partially buried in a backup mirror. Dates line up with the weeks before your inquiry. "Show me." He popped open his laptop and turned the screen toward me. I leaned in and scanned the folder names. One jumped out immediately. COLE_unstable draft. "Jesus," I muttered. He opened the first file. It was an email, time-stamped a full week before the hospital even announced an ethics review. From Vishaw at PersonalNet to R. Cole at FamilyTrust.org. Subject line, urgent, discussion points for Rebecca, ethics concerns, Saishuri, Natalie. Inside was a paragraph recommending that I be preemptively considered for psychological evaluation due to repeated signs of clinical instability, unprofessional conduct, and potential PTSD from field trauma. The tone was cold, structured, deliberate. "She sent that from the estate," Jared said, tapping the screen. "IP logged to their home Wi-Fi. This wasn't even through hospital channels. She drafted it off-grid, then scrubbed it later." "Before the board even called me," I said, voice low. "There's more." He clicked into a second email, a reply from Rebecca. "Better to handle this quietly than risk public spectacle. Speak to Evan about possible exit options. Limited exposure, no public filing. Natalie's record can't be the hill we die on." I stared at the screen. My stomach turned. Not just betrayal, premeditation. They didn't just want me silenced. They wanted me erased. "I also found a draft Vanessa saved and never sent," Jared added. "It was addressed to the board chair, but no transmission date, buried in her local backup files." He opened it. In it, Vanessa outlined a plan to transition Natalie out of practice with grace, citing the need to preserve the Cole family's professional standing. She described me as emotionally unpredictable and ended with, "If this moves forward discreetly, there will be no media blowback for the hospital or the family." I sat back in the seat and stared out the windshield. "So this was never about protocol," I said. "This was about reputation." "They needed a fall girl," Jared said, "and you were easy to sacrifice." I closed the laptop slowly. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't scared. I was done. "This is enough to open it all back up," I said. "Yeah," Jared nodded, "but you're gonna need a lawyer, a real one." I exhaled and leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "There's one name left," I said. "Grace Jennings. She used to work with Vanessa, legal counsel during her hospital board appointment." Jared raised an eyebrow. "And you think she'll talk?" "She left fast. No reason given. I think she saw something and got out before it burned her." He nodded once. "Then you better call her, before they do." I didn't wait. I called Grace from the parking lot. She didn't pick up, but I left a message. "Grace, it's Natalie Cole. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I have reason to believe you saw what Vanessa and Rebecca did. I have proof now, real proof. I'm not asking for favors, I'm asking for help. Call me back." I hung up, turned to Jared, and reached for the car door. "If she doesn't respond in 24 hours, I go public." He grabbed my wrist before I opened it. "Be careful, Nat. These people have power." I looked him dead in the eye. "Then it's time someone ripped it out of their hands." I stepped out, flash drive in my pocket, heart thudding like I'd just walked out of a war zone. Because in a way, I had. And I wasn't done yet. Grace called me back the next morning. Her voice was clipped but calm, like she'd already been turning it over in her head before I reached out. "I'll meet you," she said, "but not on the phone. There's too much history here." We agreed on a coffee shop in Alexandria, one of those spots full of laptops, whispered job interviews, and strong cold brew. She walked in wearing dark jeans, blazer, no makeup. Not hiding, just stripped down. A woman done pretending. She slid into the booth across from me and set a manila folder on the table. "You were right," she said, opening it. "I didn't leave for another job. I resigned after I realized what Vanessa was doing." I flipped through the papers. Some were red-lined memos, internal reviews with language that had been clearly rewritten. Others were side-by-side comparisons of board meeting notes. The originals showed hesitation. The versions sent to the ethics panel, all green lights to remove me. "Jesus," I muttered. "They reworded the actual votes?" Grace nodded. "Vanessa coordinated with the hospital's general counsel. said it was about clarity and board confidence. But when I flagged it, Rebecca called me directly, told me to back off or she'd file a defamation suit. Of course she did. Grace reached into her bag and pulled out one last sheet, creased, watermarked, official. This was never meant to survive, she said. I read it twice before I spoke. It was a peer review memo, originally submitted by a colleague I barely remembered, Dr. Marlene Franks, flight nurse on the same rotation. It described me as disciplined under pressure, highly focused, emotionally appropriate during triage. She vouched for me, I said. They buried it. Vanessa ordered it pulled from the file before your tribunal, Grace said. Claimed it was redundant. It wasn't. It was the only positive record in the stack. I swallowed hard. Rage burned in my chest, but it was cold now. Focused. You still have all this backed up? I asked. Every page, she said. I kept it in case I ever needed to defend myself. I pulled Jared's flash drive from my pocket and slid it across the table. Add this to your archive. Recovered emails from Vanessa's private account. You'll want to see the timestamps. Grace connected her laptop, clicked through the files. I watched her face shift, from recognition to disgust. They weren't just covering a mistake, she said slowly. They planned it. Exactly, I said. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about control. I got in the way of a story they were selling. A perfect daughter, a clean legacy, and no liability tied to family name. Grace looked up. You ready to burn them down? No, I said. I'm ready to go official. She closed the laptop. Then let's do it the right way. We mapped it out over 2 hours. She'd file the preliminary motion to request a board review, then prep a public disclosure package to submit alongside it, one that couldn't be ignored or buried. I'll need witness statements, she said. Timelines. You, Adam, your field commander if he's willing to talk. I'll handle Adam, I said. He's already asking the right questions. Grace nodded, already making notes. This is going to get loud, Natalie. Good, I said, leaning back in my seat. Let them hear it. I was halfway through typing the outline for my statement when Adam called. He didn't waste time. Can you come over? I paused. Depends. Is this a trap or a real conversation? It's real, he said. Bring whatever you've got. I think I just found something you need to see. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to his condo just outside Arlington. Gated, discreet, the kind of place where people paid extra to pretend they didn't know their neighbors. He buzzed me in and met me at the door with a folder in his hand and a look on his face I hadn't seen before. Shame, maybe, or finally understanding what the hell had been done in his name. Come in, he said quietly. He walked me to the dining table. Papers were spread out like a crime board. One was clipped on top. This, he said pointing, was flagged when I pulled my health records for the medical board. I wasn't supposed to see it. I picked it up. It was marked Confidential Memo, Vanessa Shaw, Board Liaison. In it, she described me as emotionally erratic, potentially delusional, and compromised by personal attachment to patient outcomes. No date of evaluation, no official reviewer listed, no clinical evidence. She filed this right after your second surgery, I said. When you were still unconscious, he nodded. I checked the file timestamp. It was submitted before I was even cleared to speak. Then it wasn't for your benefit. It was to cover their story. His jaw tightened. I believed everything she told me, that you'd disobeyed orders, that you'd endangered me, but she used me. She used all of us, I said. You were just the excuse. He leaned on the table, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to get the guilt off his skin. If I testify, if I give you these records, it puts me at odds with Rebecca, the foundation, the board I sit on. I stepped back. Then don't. He looked up fast. You think I'm here to beg? I said. I'm not. You want to sit this out. That's your call. But don't pretend you don't know the truth now. That's on you. He stared at me a long second. Then he nodded. I'm in. I narrowed my eyes. You sure? Yeah, he said. I let them silence the person who saved my life. I'm not doing that twice. He pulled a thumb drive from his laptop and handed it over. Board meeting minutes, email correspondence with the Foundation's counsel. Some of it's vague, but you'll see how they choreographed the narrative before any investigation started. I took the drive. You're not going to be popular after this. He laughed, but it was hollow. Was I ever? We sat down. I opened my laptop, dropped the drive in, and started copying files. Adam pulled out a notebook and started cross-referencing what he'd found with the dates in the memo. No hesitation, no excuses. By the time we were done, I had over 40 documents tagged for Grace. Internal strategy memos, Vanessa's sealed complaints, emails from Rebecca, using words like containment and public optics. It wasn't just personal, it was political. They'd turned my life into a PR problem, then scrubbed me out like a stain. "I'll get this to Grace tonight," I said, zipping the drive back into my bag. "She'll need a witness list," Adam said. "I'll write my statement. I'll testify." I nodded. "Then we're moving." He stood up and walked me to the door. "Hey, Natalie," he said just before I stepped out. "Thank you for not letting it die in the dirt." I didn't say anything back. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and gave a single nod. Then I walked down the hall, bag heavy with proof and heart dead set on finishing this. They held the review hearing in a private boardroom inside the Virginia Medical Authority's headquarters. No cameras, no press. Just a long walnut table, 5 stiff-backed chairs behind it, and the same smell I remembered from 4 years ago. Disinfectant and quiet judgment. I sat with Grace on one side. Adam was seated behind me, jaw set like stone, hands folded. I didn't look at him yet. I needed to stay forward. "Dr. Natalie Cole," one board member said, flipping through the binder Grace had compiled. "You're requesting a formal reopening of your case. On what grounds?" Grace stood. "We've submitted 23 new documents into evidence, including recovered internal emails, manipulated memos, and a sworn statement from a primary witness." I opened my folder and pulled out the printouts. Organized, color-coded, backed with metadata. These are time-stamped emails between Vanessa Shaw and Rebecca Cole. They show a coordinated effort to discredit me before the original review even began. One of the men leaned forward. "These emails, are they authenticated?" "Recovered from backup mirrors by a certified digital forensics analyst," Grace said. "The IP logs place the senders at the Cole family estate. The memo drafts match formatting from the original tribunal packets. Everything has been verified and cross-checked." I handed over the peer review memo, the one they tried to erase. This was submitted by a field medic who served with me. It never made it into my original file. They buried it because it didn't fit the narrative. The board members flipped through the pages. One of them frowned as she hit the psychological evaluation memo. "This was submitted without a licensed examiner's signature?" "Correct," Grace said. "It was written and filed by Vanessa Shaw from a personal email address. It cited no source, no incident, no dates. It was fabricated." I looked each of them in the eye. They needed me gone. I flagged a procurement problem that risked lives. Rather than fix it, they painted me as unstable. Because that was easier than accountability. Grace nodded toward Adam. "We'd like to call our witness." He stood and walked to the front without a word, his shoulders square under the pressure. "My name is Adam Lennox," he said, "and I was the patient involved in the triage incident used to justify Dr. Cole's removal. I've reviewed my own medical records. I've seen the memos Vanessa Shaw submitted under my name. And I'm here to say plainly that none of it matches the truth." He looked directly at the panel. "She saved my life. I was told she vanished after the rescue, that she suffered a breakdown. I was lied to, used. My name was attached to a false accusation. That should matter." Silence. Grace stepped forward again. "We've also submitted connection logs showing internal manipulation of Natalie's tribunal file, including tampering with official vote summaries. One chain traces directly back to a private network associated with the Cole Family Foundation. We are asking for a full reopening of the case and a correction to her professional record." The board didn't answer right away. They shuffled papers. One whispered to another. Finally, the lead member looked up. "Dr. Cole, Mr. Lennox, Ms. Jennings, this is substantial. The board will not issue a ruling today, but we are initiating a formal inquiry into the original tribunal and the individuals named in these documents, effective immediately." I nodded once. No smile, no breath of relief yet. "You will be notified when the investigation begins," the woman said. "Thank you." We stood. Grace shook a few hands. Adam reached for my bag and carried it for me without asking. The second the door opened, cold air hit my face, and there she was, Vanessa standing in the hallway outside like she'd been waiting for a funeral that hadn't happened yet. Eyes red, hands clenched, her dress perfect, lipstick untouched. But her composure, gone. You really had to go this far? She hissed. You couldn't just let it die quietly? I stopped, looked her dead in the eyes. She waited for a reaction, a fight, a scream, some kind of emotional slap she could twist into another weapon. But I gave her nothing. I turned away, walked past her without a word, and pushed the elevator button with steady hands. Adam followed, quiet. Grace stepped up behind us. The doors opened. I stepped in. No fear, no apology. Just one sharp breath as the doors closed between me and the woman who'd spent her life trying to keep me in the dark. I was done needing her permission to exist. 3 weeks later, my phone blew up before sunrise. First headline, Rebecca Shaw under investigation for ethics violations linked to medical tribunal misconduct. Second, Vanessa Coleshaw suspended from 3 hospital boards pending further review. I didn't cheer, didn't text anyone. I just sat at my kitchen table, same one I'd spread all those tribunal papers across, and let the silence say what it needed to. That afternoon, a letter arrived by courier. Thick envelope. Gold seal from the Virginia Medical Licensing Authority. Inside was a clean page with black ink. Doctor, NATALIE Cole, your license has been formally reinstated. Your public record has been corrected. That was it. No apology, no fanfare, but it was mine. The truth in writing. Grace came by that night with Thai takeout and a whiteboard. We didn't celebrate. We planned. The idea was hers, but I didn't hesitate. We build something that helps women like you, she said. Professionals silenced, cut down, erased, all because someone powerful decided they were inconvenient. We called it Second Verdict. By the end of the week, we had a mission statement and a rough framework. Grace handled the legal setup. I outlined mentorship programs. We were tired, wired, and absolutely sure about one thing. This wasn't just about me anymore. Adam called the day before he flew out. Germany, he said. New post, clean slate. I met him at a park near the airport. We sat on a bench, didn't say much. No future promises, no blurred lines. Just 2 people who walked through fire and came out knowing exactly who they were. You did the right thing, I told him. So did you, he said. Took you long enough. We smiled. Then he stood up, shook my hand like a soldier would, and walked off without looking back. The next morning, I drove out to the old clinic where I did my trauma rotation. It was smaller than I remembered, the paint a little more faded. I didn't go inside. I just walked the perimeter. Slow, quiet, civilian clothes, hair tied back, nothing flashy. No one knew me. No one stared. And for once, I didn't care. I'd spent years hiding behind silence, swallowing the lie they wrote for me. I let them define the ending, but not anymore. I didn't come here for revenge. I came for clarity, and I left knowing exactly who I was. Not broken, not erased, just finally seen.